So yesterday in part 1, we took a look at the Abyss meta in terms of controllers and sentinels. Go check it out if you haven't already seen it. Today we're going to do the same thing, but for the Initiators and the Duelists. So let's start with the Initiators, and we'll start with Breach. And you might think, if you watched yesterday's video in particular, that, hey, he was talking about how this is kind of like Icebox Pearl, and therefore Breach isn't going to be very good. But actually, I think there's some nice things for Breach on this map. You'll all know, probably by this point, that an ult can push someone off the map. That's the first thing to talk about. But the ults, as you saw on that B site, pretty good there. The same is going to be true for this A site, and I think there's going to be enough good flashes you can do as well. Like, you know, you can do a little flash through here towards A main for your team as well. You know, at the start of a round, little flashes like that are going to be pretty good. You know, the ult here on A, you know, looks pretty good to me. Right, like, looks pretty good. You know, you can send some nice flashes out as well, some nice and high ones. So yeah, I actually think that Breach, you know, I mean, you could even try and stun, you know, down here or something. You know, you can stun across the site if you wanted to, like across this. Yeah, I think that Breach is actually pretty decent. If you take a look at the defense side as well, there's similar sort of stuff that you can do, right? Like off the rip here, you can flash through this wall, right? So you can flash through here. A stun from backside here on A is going to be pretty good. If you come in towards mid, obviously it's basically like two big lanes. So, you know, Breach is pretty good at dealing with lanes, right? Like, that's going to be pretty good for either side of mid here, right? These kind of stuns are going to be pretty good. B, similar sort of story. If you're back here, right, sending a stun like this, going to be pretty good, right? Ulting for retake on B, going to be pretty good, right? So I actually was surprised how much good Breach stuff there actually was, I think. Okay, now let's talk about Fade. And, well, the thing is for Fade, of course, that this is a pretty big map. And whilst there will be some nice stuff, you know, like haunts up here or, you know, wherever, there is a lot of things that you can put a haunt on that will be, you know, fairly good. You would assume, right? Like that. I'm gonna try and get it onto that. There you go. Perfect first time, right? There's gonna be some nice Fade haunts that you can do in general, and the ult is gonna be pretty good as well. Fade just has like one major problem, and that is that I think Sova is just gonna be better. And again, that's not to say that Fade is not usable or not useful all of the time either. Like, Fade's gonna be okay. But I do think that Sova will be the better option. You know, again, over here, there's kind of no way that you can get a Fade Horn over the top. I did try, you know, to get a Fade Horn over the top of this, but it just doesn't quite reach far enough. So that's kind of a big limitation as well, early on the attack side. And then on the defense side, there isn't really, you know, a great place to put it early on, or at least that I could see, you know, to put it early on. Maybe, who knows, maybe you can get it somewhere there, but you know, like, I do think that this is just going to be more of a Sova map in general than Fade's. Okay, now on to Gecko, and I do think that Gecko has some nice things in general on this map. Obviously, you know, we're looking at maps like akin to Icebox or Pearl, right, which actually are fairly decent maps for Gecko in general. You know, there's quite a few little safe flashes you can do like that will clear some angles for you in general. And yeah, I do think that Gecko could be pretty decent. Obviously, the wingman plants will be fairly good, whether it's, you know, something like this, you know, into that corner, getting the spike down nice and, you know, or safer, you might say. You know, whether it's something like this, which you can just about do if you jump, you can see you can get him to plant kind of closer and safer there for wingman as well. So stuff like that is going to be pretty good. I do think the defense side, you know, you could struggle a little bit, right? But a flash like that might be okay early on, but, you know, it is a bit risky. And I do think the defense side, yeah, you might struggle a little bit on the defense side with Gecko on this one, right? Little mosh bits in, you know, somewhere back here will be very strong for the attack side if you can get a mosh lineup for this. You know, little stuff like that I think will be very strong. And I think on the whole, you know, with the wingman plants and the wingman diffuses, how I expect this map to go, I think that Gecko will be a pretty viable option. Okay, for KO, obviously, again, we're talking about maps like Icebox and Pearl, which, again, KO is, you know, fairly decent on. And you know, obviously, you can assume, you know, getting a KO knife in something like this, you know, you can throw some nice KO knives, you know, something like that early on in defender's side, you know, it's going to be pretty good for suppressing towards A. Obviously, KO is kind of decent on every map. I think it's actually kind of hard to find a map that KO is completely trash on, to be honest. He's going to find some use kind of everywhere, and the same is going to be true here as well, right? Because the KO knife is just good. You know, you assume you're going to throw it up somewhere like that. Obviously, you can put it very high. The circle is very big. The same is going to be true for attack side. I think this B side is a little bit harder to find, like, where your best attacking knife is. You know, because I don't think there's a great place to put a KO knife that, like, is in a place that you can't destroy at all. You can put it on this, but then, you know, it might not catch everything that you need it to. If you want to do these, like, perfect time flashes as well, you know, there's going to be ample opportunity to do them, you know, for your teammates as well. So yeah, KO is just going to be a fairly decent option. Okay, in terms of Sky, obviously, I think Sky will be a playable option. You know, it won't be bad. I'm thinking, like, defense side, you know, like, there isn't a ton of maybe perfect stuff for this. You know, you could maybe try and send a flash out here, but it might be a bit late. They might already be up here, right? You could send the flash, like, try and aim it, like, to stop, like, here where this window is, right? So you're trying to aim your flash to be about here, so it catches people in the window or catch people out here. That's probably what you'll want to be doing on this defense side, if you can. So yeah, you're just trying to learn where that window is to try and get the flash best timing as you can. The Skydog does go pretty far, you know, I mean, it does go pretty far. So for instance, if you're coming in towards, you know, this B site here, you know, you can wrap kind of all the way around the site just there on either side. So, you know, that is a benefit. The problem is, of course, like, people standing up here will be able to destroy that dog from, you know, quite far away. Like, sending a dog up here, you know, you assume that if anyone is, you know, on these angles, you know, it's going to be fairly simple to destroy for them. So, you know, that's maybe not the best. Coming over towards A. Again, the dog will clear, you know, everything you kind of want it to and need it to, and it will go pretty far if it can survive, right? You can see I can get towards the back side there, so that's pretty good. But, you know, it does need to be able to survive that, which on such a wide open, big map like this, I'm just not sure will be happening all of the time. And then finally we have Sova, and Sova will be meta on this map, almost certainly, in my opinion. I mean, there's going to be plenty of, you know, interesting little darts. Obviously, I don't have the lineups for you here, but, you know, just in general, like, putting darts in a ton of different areas. I mean, even if you put one, you know, up on the ceiling here, right, like, it will still scan you. It still comes all the way down and scans you, right? So even, like, darts super high up are going to be, you know, incredibly good. You know, I mean, just pinging a dart, you know, something like that, it's still going to scan people. They're going to have to aim up at the ceiling. Like, there's just going to be so many good lineups here for Sova in general, I would assume. And, you know, again, we're talking about maps like, you know, Icebox. Obviously, a kind of a Sova map in general. I think this will be much the same. You know, you think about some of these drones that you can do, like this drone coming in here, right? I've just cleared everything that I need to from this angle. You know, I'm clearing the first part of A here. I can come around and clear that. I can come around, clear this close right. I can then come around, clear this close left. Like, I can do everything, right? Obviously, the Sova ult will be good for the post plants as well. You know, the shock dots will be good for post plant spam stuff as well. It's just good. There's going to be a ton of good darts, you know, I mean, just on, like, all these ceilings all the time, right? Like, little stuff like this. Just going to be so strong. Yeah, there's really no other way of putting it. They're just going to be super strong. There's going to be a very common drone to come around here, right? To come around here and take a look at this, and then, you know, maybe do a bit of this, right? Something like that. Again, going to be incredibly good, you know, aiming darts on, you know, something like this or whatever, right? Clear out most of the site. Sova's just going to be good. I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, as soon as you see this map, you can kind of tell, like, yeah, this looks like a Sova map. Sova will be good, you know, sending darts, something like this on a wall like that. Same from defense side, you know, sending it, you know, somewhere, something like this maybe. It's just going to be good, right? As they come into mid, this dart still sees them. They're just there. Yeah, it scans all this side. The Sova is just going to be meta on this map. I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked if Sova wasn't meta on this map. So in terms of the Initiators then, I mean, again, the Initiators as a class are just all pretty decent, right? So, like, none of them will be trolling. I think in terms of ranked, you can pretty much play whatever you want and probably find some success with it. But I do think that Sova is kind of the clear choice overall and will be incredibly good. And now let's move on to the Duelists then. Let's start here then with ISO, and obviously we have the Duelist changes in general to talk about. We won't focus on that too much because obviously that's kind of a thing for every map. But in terms of Abyss, like, ISO, I don't think will be a pro agent still, right? I still think the rest of ISO's kit just isn't quite good enough overall, but obviously having the shield, even at the very highest levels, is an incredibly strong ability to just be able to have, right? Incredibly good. The ult, you know, is long enough to kind of catch everything you sort of need it to, right? Like, I mean, if you're back here, you know, you can catch anyone on site, you can catch anyone, you know, over the side as well, right? No problem. So I still think that, you know, the rest of ISO's kit isn't good enough to warrant, you know, high level play. But it's not awful, right? It's still not awful. And so I think in ranked with the shield changes, ISO's going to be incredibly good, incredibly popular. Okay, then on to Jet, and there's no simple way of saying this other than this is a Jet map. In my opinion, Jet, absolute meta. Of course, there's a ton of different elevations and stuff like that for Jet to play around with on this map. I think it will be a heavy up map. So if you aren't going with chamber and instead, are going for jet, I think that, jet will just be a great choice, honestly. I just think that jet will just be an amazing choice overall. The one thing you kind of can't do is, come over here. And obviously, again, like, just with the drifting off the map and all that stuff, like, all the crazy stuff that you can do with the knives, right? Like, drift off the map, updraft, dash back onto the map, that kind of stuff. It's just going to be incredibly good, jet on this map. Really, the only thing you can't do is dash, like, like if you were opping here, for instance, like, dashing this way just isn't the easiest just there, as you see. But other than that, pretty much everything is available to jet on this map, and because it's going to be a heavy up map, don't see a way it's not a jet map. It's kind of everything you want, just like early on getting aggressive, playing something like this. I mean, there's just so many possibilities for jet in general. And if jet had a second updraft, this map would be a joke. In terms of like updraft where you want to dash onto the site, I'm thinking maybe you want to go up top again, something like this. You could assume would be quite good coming in here towards A. The same kind of true towards B. Might be a bit more difficult on B, just in general, because but then again, the first smoke, if you got two smokes, the first one can help you maybe, if you kind of bend it around the corner here, like something like that, right? And then again, you're coming in here, don't miss the smoke. I'm not a jet main, but yeah, I just think that jet, it's just good. It's just really good on this map. Let's move on to Neon. And obviously Neon with the buffs, I mean, particularly for ranked, I think is going to be an absolute menace, right? I mean, the rechargeable, fuel for the running, like obviously on a big map like this, is definitely going to help you, rotate, get across pretty quick. Neon definitely has some strengths in terms of those kind of things. I do think, though, like, again, I think that this will be a jet map, and I do think that the nerf to the the stun here, I do think, again, if we're talking about like high level play, I do think that nerf does matter in high level play quite a lot. But Neon will be good. Doing some kind of wall like this, could be very strong, right? Allowing you to come out this way. You then have the second slide. Something like that could be very strong, right? Could be very good. And the same is true for A, right? Like, again, the double wall, with running in there, like, it's gonna be pretty strong. Like, I think Neon, you can get to something like this. Again, like something like this, jumping across, sliding back here, could be pretty good. Definitely playable for ranked. I think pro, you probably will see more jet overall, but if you want to play Neon in ranked, go for it. Okay, now on to Phoenix, and let's first talk about the ult orbs, because I do think that the ult orbs are pretty farmable. I think that this one shouldn't be too hard to get a lot of the time, honestly, for the attackers. And then the one towards A, like, if you want the ult orb towards A, you definitely can come and get it. And again, flashing people off this initial angle right here, coming round, like, will work pretty well, I think. Obviously, the map is a little big, but again, like, doing a Phoenix wall like this across is perfectly fine. Right, that's going to cause you problems, and then obviously you have the choice to kind of come through it if you want to, or maybe even get a bit cheeky and try and get up top. Whatever it is, right, could all be very good. Obviously the Molly, it is a pretty big map, so it's maybe not going to be the easiest map to play with the Phoenix Molly in general, though I think over towards B there are some like you could just do something like that, and that'll land something like here. And I do think that the wall actually is kind of useful and helpful overall. I do think that the wall, again, you can assume doing something like this, coming and attacking back sight. Like, the wall is actually fairly decent on this map, as opposed to most maps where it's not that useful. So definitely some options here for Phoenix, but obviously it's Phoenix. And then we have Raze, who obviously got the satchel nerfs, and I think on a big map like this, I mean, I'm no satchel expert, but, obviously it will be a bit of a problem in terms of limiting how far you can actually go. And I think that's just true of the entire map for Raze, right? That the nade, you're maybe not going to find as much value from because the map is quite big. Not that it's useless, obviously, and the same kind of true for the boombot here as well, that it's maybe not going to go as far as you want there. So I don't think that this will be a Raze map just because, of how big it is. Obviously, Raze does still benefit from the, the crazy things that you can maybe do by, satcheling off the map and satcheling back on it and all that kind of stuff. Like, you'll be able to do some crazy stuff, I'm sure, and you can have fun with it, but I don't think this will be a Raze meta map. Okay, next up is Reyna. Okay, and now Yoru. First thing with Yoru, of course, is just be careful not to TP off the map, because it will fall down and die there. If we're coming and attacking A, then, you know, you can send a TP back here. It will survive. You just have to be kind of very careful with exactly where you put it, because it can fall down here, but it can, as you see just there, just about live as well. So, you know, just be wary of that in terms of playing Yoru on this map. In terms of defending, obviously you're just going to be using your TPs probably to fast rotate, which on a big map like this will be quite handy, right? Like you send your TP out to A, you know, I'm playing B, oh, they're going A, fast rotate, right? That's going to be quite handy on a map like this in general, and obviously vice versa. In terms of attacking B, you know, you can send a TP, you know, just something like this will be pretty good, and that's going to end up, you know, somewhere here on this back site, and, you know, that should be fairly safe, you know, send in a flash with it. You know, and then go from there, right? Something like this. Kill anyone back here. Should be fairly decent, I would think. So yeah, Yoru should be pretty decent option for that. Obviously, you can use Yoru as an opping agent as well, of course, you know, for this map, and try and abuse that if you want to, because, again, that should be something you want to abuse. And then you can even get into, you know, certain positions that you maybe can't with any other agent safely, right? Something like this. It's probably not something that, you know, you're going to do with anyone else, but you could do with Yoru. In terms of the duelists, then, I do think it will be a jet map overall, but in ranked, I think, you know, a lot of the duelists are playable. Obviously, they're kind of changed and new and exciting for the most part, the duelists now. So, yeah, I do think it'll be a jet map, but I do think that the others will still potentially see some play.